Greetings and welcome to A Contemplative Reader, where together we will explore the spiritual, the mysterious, the mystical, the otherworldly, and the transcendent in various forms of literature. Today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different, in that I'll be offering a bookshelf tour of various classic mass-market science fiction and fantasy paperbacks in my collection. Not a complete bookshelf tour, but just some of them that I happen to have. Now, how do I define classic? Well, they have to be older than me, in that the printing date of these books has to be before 1970. I have various books where the publication date was before 1970, but the actual printing date that I have is younger than I am, in other words, after 1970. But I'm only going to be showing you books that are actually printed at a date that is older than I am. And why am I going through these paperbacks at this time? Well, you've probably heard by now that at least here in the United States, mass market paperbacks will no longer be published, nor will they be distributed by the various book distributors. So soon, at least as a new commodity, mass market paperbacks will be extinct. I will be going through some of these in my collection, as I said, and I'll be going through them in alphabetical order by author. So we will begin with none other than Isaac Asimov. This particular collection is called The Martian Way and Other Stories, and it was published in 1957, collecting the short stories The Martian Way, Youth, The Deep, and Suckerbait. This was published by Signet Books, and you could pick it up for a whopping 35 cents. Next in my collection, also by Isaac Asimov, is The Fantastic Voyage. This went along with the release of the movie of the same name, starring Raquel Welch, and this was published in 1966 by Bantam Books. And I just love the description on the back. A bold journey into a new dimension of entertainment and excitement, 4 men and 1 woman reduced to a microscopic fraction of their original size, boarding a miniaturized atomic sub and being injected into a dying man's carotid artery, fighting their way past giant antibodies, passing through the heart itself, entering the inner ear where even the slightest sound would destroy them, battling relentlessly into the cranium, their objective to reach a blood clot and destroy it with the piercing rays of a laser gun. At stake, the fate of the entire world. Next, Edward P. Bradbury, Barbarians of Mars. This was published by Lancer Books for the cost of 50 cents. And the printing date of this book is 1965. Now, you might be thinking, well, I've heard of Ray Bradbury, but who is Edward P. Bradbury? Well, Edward P. Bradbury was the pen name of none other than Michael Moorcock, who published the Michael Caine trilogy, of which this is a part there in the 1960s. And I love this fake biography that's in the towards the front of the book. Edward Powys, P-O-W-Y-S, not sure how to pronounce that. Bradbury was born in 1924 and spent some time in the Far East, where he developed a strong interest in ancient Sanskrit literature. He returned to England in 1955 when, in his own words, "The demise of 2 elderly relatives left me with the shocking insinuation that I no longer had to work for a living." So he began writing fiction and continued to travel, this time in Europe, Africa, and America. He has written detective stories, westerns, and weird thrillers, as well as nonfiction. In fact, he cannot stop writing and is convinced that when he dies, he will be found with a pen in his hand. His only hope is that the story will be finished. So I love that fictional biography of Edward Bradbury, the pen name of Michael Moorcock. Next, perhaps no surprise, I have several paperbacks pre-1970 from Edgar Rice Burroughs. Now, when I was growing up in the late 70s, early 80s, the Martian Tales, stories of John Carter of Mars, were published with these wonderful Michael Whalen covers. For example, here's The Gods of Mars, with that Whalen cover, and The Warlord of Mars, with another Whalen cover. But I also have several mass market paperbacks, which are from the 1960s. I don't have a complete collection of the Martian stories of Edgar Rice Burroughs in these books published by Ballantine, but I have a good chunk of them. I have Princess of Mars. You could pick up for 50 cents, by Ballantine Books, and this was published. This was printed, I should say, in 1964. I go on to have the second book in the series, The Gods of Mars. The third book in the series from the 1960s, The Warlord of Mars. Then move on. I have the ninth book in the series, The Synthetic Men of Mars. I have the 10th book in the series, Lana of Gathol. And I have the 11th book in this series, John Carter of Mars. Again, all of these were published in the 1960s. So I kind of have a mix and match. I have some of the books of Edgar Rice Burroughs' Martian stories from the 60s, and then the rest of them published in the 70s and 80s. And the same is true with Edgar Rice Burroughs' Tarzan stories. Again, growing up in the 70s and 80s, most of the time you could find the Tarzan books in these black covers with the wonderful covers by Boris Vallejo. Again, just look at this. This is book number 12, Tarzan and the Lost Empire. But I do have quite a chunk of the Tarzan books published and printed in the 1960s. So I'll just go through these really quickly. Again, these are Ballantine books offered for 50 cents, starting with the first book in the series, Tarzan of the Apes. And we have The Return of Tarzan. Then we have, skip ahead to 4, The Son of Tarzan. Number 6, we have The Jungle Tales of Tarzan. Number 7, Tarzan the Untamed. We have number 8, Tarzan the Terrible. Number 10, Tarzan and the Ant-Man. And we're starting to get into the era of the Tarzan stories, which is why I justify including these in science fiction and fantasy. Again, I think I'm growing to appreciate having a broader definition of the fantasy genre. And I think when you're talking about Ant-Man or number 13, Tarzan at the Earth's Core, I think that those books qualify as fantasy. So then we have number 20, Tarzan and the Forbidden City. I have this out of order. 19, Tarzan's Quest. And 18, Tarzan and the Leopard Men. And 17, Tarzan and the Lion Man. Then I have, actually, I believe these are even older than those mid-60s Ballantine publications. This is from Ace Paperbacks for 40 cents. You get Tarzan the Invincible. I have a couple other Edgar Rice Burroughs publications and printings from the 1960s. I have At the Earth's Core, and I have The Eternal Savage. So that is my Edgar Rice Burroughs collection of paperbacks printed before 1970. So on to some of the rest of my classic science fiction and fantasy paperbacks. I have The Lost World from Arthur Conan Doyle, of course most famously known as the author of Sherlock Holmes. So this book you could pick up for 35 cents from Pyramid Books, kind of a publisher you don't hear much about. This was originally published, of course, in 1912, but this particular printing was from June of 1960, released in conjunction with the release of a movie. And now a thrilling motion picture starring Claude Rains, Michael Rennie, Fernando Lamas, and Jill St. John. Later, of course, was a Bond girl in Diamonds Are Forever. And I love the description, which is definitely of its time, perhaps. 4 white men beset by danger from all sides were ascending the unexplored headwaters of the Amazon. Deep in the heart of the jungle, they found a prehistoric inferno. It was the lost world, strange and frightening, filled with all of the fury of the bloodiest, weirdest era the earth ever knew. I just love that a kind of classic image on the cover there with the T-Rex and the man and the woman there trying to fight him off. A fantastic expedition back to the dawn of time. Next, I have The Spot of Life by Austin Hall. This is a classic science fiction story to open up the spot of life, to plunge through the heart of the great American city with an army of unearthly terrors. This was a plan, and for them, each hour was a matter of minutes away. Austin Hall's novel is a classic science fiction suspense novel of parallel worlds. This one I picked up at a used bookstore. I still actually have the little paper receipt that was handwritten out for me. On August 21, 1984, I bought this for 35 cents, which is actually less than the list price of 40 cents on the cover. This was an Ace paperbacks printing from 1965. Austin Hall lived from 1885 to 1933, and he primarily wrote for pulp magazines, but they continued to publish his books at least into the 1960s. And so I love these little Ace mass market paperbacks. Then I'll move on to, of course, the classic Robert E. Howard, probably one of my most favorite writers ever. I have all of the Conan books published in the Ace paperback collection, but I was looking through all of them, and the printings I have are all from the 70s and 80s. And some of the other ones that I have are also from that era. Here, just as an example, some of them from Ace paperback have this kind of cover. Again, they all have these little glorious Frazetta covers. Some of them kind of have that darker printing color to them. Some of them have this white trim to it. For example, here, Conan the Conqueror, number 9, and Conan the Warrior, number 7. So I looked through my collection, and I thought, well, surely I must have several Howard books pre-1970. But I found this Brand McMorn book and this Cormac MacArt book, and these were all published in the 1970s as well. But I did find one mass market paperback from Robert E. Howard, published before 1970, and this is Al Murik, which you could pick up from Ace paperbacks for 60 cents. And the publishing date of this is 1964. Original material serialized in Weird Tales, 1939. This is Robert E. Howard's great interplanetary story. When Esau Karen was sent across space to the demon-haunted planet of Almuric, he knew nothing of his destination. The secret discovery of the scientist who had invented the space transition machine, Almuric, was a world of strange and terrible beings, of savages and swordsmen, of winged monsters, and incredible secrets. Next, I have The Black Cloud by Fred Hoyle. This is an old school library copy, so it's pretty beat up. This is the story of the Earth was dying. 1/4 of the population was dead. The rest had little time to live. A mass of interstellar matter had invaded the solar system, flinging planets out of orbit and blocking off the sun. In that titanic disaster, man had one small chance to survive: appeal to an alien intelligence that might exist and that might or might not care enough to help. Fred Hoyle was an actual astronomer and wrote several science fiction stories as well. And this particular printing is from Signet for 50 cents, and it was printed in I believe this was 1959, if I remember correctly. Not seeing the printing date here, but it was somewhere in the late 1950s. Next, we have Andre Norton, famous classic science fiction author. This is The Moon of Three Rings from Ace paperbacks for 60 cents, and this was published in 1966. At the time of the Moon of the Three Rings, the galactic trade ship Lytus lands on the planet Yictor. On Yictor, Krip Vorland, great names here, a junior crew member, seeks amusement at a beast show. He is strangely attracted to the owner of the show animals, a delicate and mysterious woman, Malin. When Vorland is kidnapped by a combine seeking to control the planet, he learns too well the nature of Malin's sorcery. She transforms him into a wolfish creature, in which form he retains his own soul. So this one I just picked up fairly recently, and it's in really good shape. So I'm glad to have picked that up. Then I have H. Beam Piper's Space Viking. This you could pick up at Ace Paperback for, I believe it was 40 cents in 1963. After a galaxy-wide war had left the Planetary Federation in ruins, every surviving civilized world was on its own, and that was a perfect setup for the marauders from the far-out rim. Space Viking. I have several of H. Beam Piper's little fuzzy books, but those are all printing dates after 1970. Then I have an ace double, just to show you here some of these in my collection. I thought I'd show you one of them. So ace doubles, you have one book on one side and you flip it over and you have another book on the other side. And so this has The Man Who Saw Tomorrow by Jeff Sutton. And I was pleasantly surprised to find out that I did have a Clifford D. Simak book in my collection, So Bright the Vision, a brand new collection of Simak's best science fiction. It's got 4 Simak short stories in it. As I've mentioned before in a couple of other videos, this year I've been reading some more Clifford D. Simak, and I wasn't sure if I had any old paperbacks from him, and lo and behold, I did. And also recently at a used bookstore, I picked up another Clifford D. Simak book, Worlds Without End. This was published in 1956 by Columbia Publications, and you picked this up for 50 cents. I should note that this ace double was printed, I'm not sure what the printing date, this was printed in 1968, it looks like. You can pick that up for 60 cents. So, Worlds Without End by Simak, a link between yesterday and the tomorrow that was here already, dreams constructed and maintained by society, a world to search for an elusive secret. Again, love that classic sci-fi cover there. Space Hounds of IPC by Edward E. Smith. When the Interplanetary Corporation's crack space liner Arcturus took off on a routine flight to Mars, it turned out to be the beginning of a most unexpected trip to the unexplored moons of the distant Jupiter. Edward E. Smith lived from 1890 to 1965. He was a food engineer specializing in donut and pastry mixes. And sometimes he is called the father of the space opera. So this copy of Space Hounds of IPC was published by Ace for 40 cents. You could pick this up. And this was printed in I don't know if I have the printing date on this. Looks like it was originally copyrighted in 1947, but I believe this copy was printed in the early 1960s. Next, I have Donald E. Wollheim, The Secret of Saturn's Rings. Space explorer Bruce Rhodes must unlock the mystery of Saturn or Earth will perish. This was published in 1954. Originally copyrighted in 1954. This is a printing from August of 1966. A paperback library edition. Again, you could pick this up for 50 cents. Wollheim, of course, he lived until 1990. He was a writer, sci-fi publisher, and he founded Daw Books in 1972. One last book. This is not as a collection of various authors, and this was actually published in 1971, so this is slightly younger than me, or printed in 1971, I should say. The Science Fiction Hall of Fame, Volume 1, The Greatest Science Fiction Stories of All Time. And I show this to you because it is a lovely copy of many classic science fiction stories that were voted upon by science fiction writers to be the greatest science fiction stories written from there's some date on here, I believe, before 1965, I believe. And you can pick this up from Avon Books for relatively inexpensively as well. I don't see the price on it, but anyway, a lovely copy. It was given to me by my son last year, I believe, on Father's Day. So that concludes my paperback tour of mass market paperbacks in the science fiction and fantasy genre that sadly no longer that will exist as a product you can buy in the United States, but the memory will live on through these various classic stories in used bookstores and online. Thank you for watching. Peace be with you.